Hi there and welcome. I'm James Kwantes, editor and publisher of Resource Opportunities. And joining me today are North Arrow Minerals CEO Ken Armstrong and the company's chairman, Gren Thomas. Welcome, guys.
Morning.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. Thanks everybody for joining us. There will be a Q&A after the conversation. So enter your questions there. And of course, we're also doing the book draw. Make sure you stay tuned for that. So we're going to talk diamonds, we're going to talk discoveries, and of course, North Arrow's Naujaat project. So North Arrow is a Canadian diamond exploration and development company focused on Canada, and the flagship project is Naujaat, which has a population of fancy orangey-yellow diamonds. And there's a bulk sample being processed right now. The company's backed by Lucas Lundin, Ross Beatty, a couple of heavyweights, and the largest shareholder actually is Gren, who's with us today with over 10%. So Gren, for those of you who don't know, his company Aber Resources made the Diavik diamond discovery in 1994, which became Canada's second diamond mine. And it was kind of a crazy time in Canada. He writes about it in his book, and we'll touch on Aber and on that time period a little later. But maybe a good thing to start the conversation with is the share structure. So got some big holders, and Gren, you're the largest shareholder with over 10%. So just wanted to touch on, the share price has languished and slid down for several years, and it remains a tough time for junior mining companies. And at sub 10 million market cap, it's almost like the market's pricing the company for failure. But you keep buying in the public market, a large stake. So what do you see as the opportunity here, and why do you keep buying stock here, Gren?
Well, I've been in the mining business since 57. It's something like 65 years or something. So I take a longer term view of things. And of course, there are many cycles, some short, some long. And we've been in a fairly long diamond cycle. But eventually they'll come through it, and there are signs that it's about to happen. But also, an interesting thing happened just a month ago to me. One of the first discoveries I ever made was a rare earth beryllium, yttrium, niobium discovery near Yellowknife in 1976. It finally got into production this summer. So, and it's going to be Canada's first rare earth producer, which gives you an idea of the time frames you have to look at here. Having said that, we're not that far off in Naujaat now. We're going to know pretty soon what we have.
We don't want to wait that long.
Well, we have waited a while at Naujaat because it's a cycle. But as I say, they can be rather lengthy. That company, by the way, that made the discovery, the rare earth discovery, was my first public company in 76, 77. And it was the parent company to what became Aber, and subsequently Harry Winston and various other companies since.
Right. I was interested to read that one of your first prospecting jobs was up like in the Lac de Gras area, but was it for copper?
Yes, I worked for giant Yellowknife mines in those days, and they had some idea that a copper deposit could be found up in that area because they're right rocks to the south of Lac de Gras. There are small copper deposits there, actually, but it is more of a gold camp, really. The area there south of there, yeah. So I was on Lac de Gras, yes, in 65, 66, yeah.
Yeah, and of course your daughter Ira Thomas was involved in the Diavik discovery. She now runs Lucara Diamond and involved in some other companies. And she was key to Naujaat, wasn't she, bringing the project into North Arrow?
Well, she was, because she is very involved in diamond exploration, really, in Canada, throughout the world, really. And she was well aware of this Naujaat deposit, which became orphaned because BHP, who made the discovery from grassroots discovery, decided to exit the diamond space. So the property was sitting there orphaned. So she brought to our attention and was very integral in our securing that project, which was how long ago now, Ken?
That was in 2013, so
Yeah, so it's
7 or 8 years ago.
It's a time back. Yeah, but it was because of her knowledge of it, because she was working on other deposits in that area to the north with Stornoway.
Right. And is she still a fan of the project?
Well, of course, and she's a big supporter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, NAR acts as a technical advisor for us, so definitely actively involved in the work that we're doing.
Right.
I don't think I did.
Okay, well, why don't we get
acquiring
into...
stock.
Sorry, go ahead, Gren.
Yeah, I was. That's the reason I keep acquiring stock, because Ira tells me to.
Okay, why don't we go from there into the Naujaat project? So collected a big bulk sample, funded by the partner. So Ken, why don't you take us through what's happening on the ground now?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, James. I mean, Naujaat, as you mentioned, it's sort of our flagship, our sort of highest priority property out of a number of projects and diamond projects that we have in the company. We've been evaluating the deposit since 2014. There's a couple of points about it that I've been pointing out sort of all the way along in terms of it's in a really good jurisdiction in Nunavut. It's a region where you can permit mines. I mean, Agnico has permitted 3 mines in that region of the territory over the last 10 years or so. It's right on tidewater, so right very close to the community of Naujaat. It's actually within the municipality, which reduces the cost of just getting stuff up there. And it's a big deposit. It's about 48 million tons of kimberlite down to 200 meters below surface. We have drill holes that are down 400 meters below surface that are still in kimberlite. So a significant inventory of diamonds that we know are there with exploration upside to sort of better define the main kimberlite that we call Q1 to 4, but also to make new discoveries around there. There are other kimberlites that are known that only have a couple of drill holes in them. So it has an awful lot going for it. But the key thing with diamond deposits is once you know where it is and how big it is and how many diamonds are there, getting enough diamonds to actually look at, to evaluate. And that led us to the bulk sample that we collected this summer. We've been planning for it over a number of years. To collect it, it was 2,000 tons. So about 2,500, not about, it was 2,500 megabags of kimberlite. And collected in a pretty cost-effective way. We slung out 2 excavators to the site, and then we were able to use those excavators to open up 3 different pits in areas where we know the kimberlite is close to surface, stripping away the overburden. And once we get down to the kimberlite, we're able to, in some cases, just pile it up with a shovel or rip it with an ice pick into piles, which we could then fill into the megabags for the sample. Not a whole lot of infrastructure, just the excavators, some 2x4s to put together these cradles that the megabags can sit on, and the strong arms of our work crew to fill these bags, which then would get secured in the pit and then slung to our laydown, which is right near the community of Naujaat. So this is actually the last bag of the program, so bag number 2,500. So that's a lot of trips back and forth, but just taking its sort of 6-minute flight to get it from the sample pit to our laydown. Through most of the program, we used 2 helicopters to do this, because they were able to help us keep pace with the rate at which we were able to fill bags in the sample pits. We were able to keep the pits pretty clear by using the 2 helicopters. So, I mean, 2,500 bags is a lot. You can see that here. You can see some color coding, which breaks out the different subsamples that we have. But a key part of the program, of course, like any program, is our work crew. And very pleased and proud to say about 2/3 of our work crew were local employees from Naujaat. Super important during filling the bags, but also for moving the bags from our laydown down onto the beach, and then from the beach onto the annual sea lift. So we, in September, once we got a flatbed truck into the community, over 4 days and nights, we moved those 2,500 bags down onto the beach. And like you can see here, coming up, a pile of the bags on the beach, awaiting arrival of the annual sea lift from Nunavut Sea Link and Supply. Once that sea lift arrived, it sort of starts the dance of the loaders as they would put the bags onto these trays, about 10 bags per tray, which then went on to the small barges, which then in turn would get pushed out to the main sea lift at anchor offshore, which then the sea lift traveled to Montreal, where the bags were offloaded, and then put onto flatbed trucks, where they've been driven to Saskatchewan Research Council in Saskatoon. And as we announced last week, now we're doing everything in reverse and opening up the bags to put them through a processing plant. That process just involves screening and washing the material, some crushing. The right size material goes through a dense media to create a DMS, or a heavy mineral concentrate, which will then upgrade to a hand sortable diamond concentrate to try and recover these diamonds, like we can see here. I mean, there are lots of white diamonds we know in the sample, but our real focus for this are those orangey-yellow colored diamonds that we think have some real value upside, and that's what we're looking to do with this sample. So very similar. I mean, it's why we're kind of talking about it. It's not often that a project gets to this point where there's a big sample being processed. Gren has been through it before with Aber and Diavik, so we're kind of right on that cusp, we think, and it's important to get the story out there now, what we're doing in the lab.
Yeah. Maybe, when you talk about Northern Canadian projects, two of the things that come up as far, when investors are looking at potential fatal flaws are sort of like the community, local support, and then also wildlife. Can you just quickly touch on those two factors?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as said, we're working from the community in Naujaat on this project, which is advantageous from a whole number of levels. But from the community's perspective, I think number one is it means that our employees are working and they're living at home at night. So they go home at night and have dinner with their family and feel directly involved in the work that's happening. So there's a direct connection that way. We have been looking, obviously, with the proximity of the deposit to the community itself, is the idea of getting a road built out. And it's the hamlet that is controlling that project. They are they wanted to get an access road built out in that direction. They have funding from the territorial government right now. It's gone through the initial stages of permitting and just working on final permitting for that road this year. And with that initial funding, looking at water crossings, those sorts of things. And wildlife are, main, it's Nunavut. So the main wildlife of concern would be caribou, particularly where we're working. And we have a mitigation protocol in place that we've worked out with the hunters and trappers in the community and the community leadership and the community itself. And it worked quite well. It was one of the reasons, again, for the two helicopters, was to try and get the sample done as soon as we could in the year, because caribou typically arrive in mid-August and into September. So we wanted to get the sample done before then, and we got it done well in advance of the movement of the caribou through the area this year. So it's a constant conversation with engagement, but it's something that I think we feel pretty good about.
Mm-hmm. Now, getting back to the sort of the Diavik staking rush and the early diamond rush, some of that land is still in North Arrow, is that right?
Yeah, through our LDG joint venture with Arctic Canadian Diamond Company, it's kind of come and gone, and that is not the exact Diavik area, I guess, Gren, but it's an area that was picked up in some joint ventures by Aber subsequently, and have gone through a couple of iterations through a few of our companies, but it's an active joint venture right now. Yes.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of the book, Gren, is of course the big staking rush, right? The discovery by Diamet, and then you guys acted. You and your partner Chris Jennings were able to act quite quickly, right? Because you're familiar with the North. So what are your kind of sort of favorite memories of that time period?
Well, it was Yellowknife is a great exploration town. At least it used to be, and in those days, there were a lot of prospectors, geologists, bush pilots, and helicopter pilots, and all the assorted support industries, and they were all abuzz with this discovery, but nothing much was going on. It was a bit like the phony war. Everyone knew something interesting was happening, but no one seemed to know what to do about it. And I fortunately met up with Chris Jennings in Toronto one day, and at a separate meeting. And he told us what he thought about it all. And so speaking to Chris, of course, you'll get pretty excited about diamonds. And so we decided we'd got an acquired ground. And we did it in a fairly furtive way, because I was fairly well known on Yarmouth, and a lot of people knew who Chris Jennings was. So they didn't really, it wasn't a good idea for us to be seen together. So we stayed in separate hotels, and eventually got up there and staked that ground, which eventually became, of course, the ground that the Divik discovery was made on. And but it was a very exciting period, and I remember some of the silly things, being in the tent one night up on Lac de Gras, near the helicopters were parked, and a windstorm came up, and the tent ridgepole snapped, and so everyone woke up in the night with this wind blowing and soot from the oil stove all over. Everyone covered in soot, no lights. That was a fun time. Chris and I were sleeping opposite each other. Yeah, well, I remember those sort of funny things better than I remember the more normal things, I think.
Right. And that was the height of winter too, wasn't it, when you did that staking?
It was about 30 below. It was cold and dark. The amount of time you could actually fly was fairly limited to probably about 5 or 6 hours a day. And we were there, in November, December, right? And yeah. Great
I was
memories.
sort of struck by, the time period. I mean, I think Fipke announced the diamond discovery in November '91, and then Divik, you discovered that all the way in 1994. So there must have been some nervous moments in that time period, because you guys had a lot of ground up there, right?
Well, we did, and we had a lot of very complex joint ventures with people too, by virtue of the fact we had so much ground, and because we were there, we were able to acquire ground for people and get carried interest in things, So we ended up with some very complex deals. The most famous one of which was GHK, Dentonia, Horseshoe, and Kettle River, and they made a discovery early on up there, which subsequently turned out to be not to be economic. But that caused a lot of fuss and bother in the market when the stock prices collapsed, when they announced the results, which weren't that good.
I guess there were a few moments like that in that time period.
Yeah. At one time, we had an interest in a 1.5 million acres of land. And a lot of it joint ventured. Yeah. And of course, we go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was about to say that when we got into this thing, initially, we did all the staking, all these joint ventures, and then eventually, of course, we made a deal with a company called Kennecott, which was the Rio Tinto company that undertook the work in that area at the time. And one of the important things we did in there was to insist in keeping 40% interest in the project with the right to market that 40% diamonds ourselves. If we had not done that, we would never have had ABBA become the third largest diamond company in the world with a market cap of $2 billion. So this is why we have a 40% interest in this project with Burgundy.
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of parallels, isn't there? I mean, one is that it seems like it's open pitable, Naujaat, and the 40% interest. How important was that to, how important was that in influencing your deal with Burgundy?
Well,
it's
very much that. Our experience in ABBA that really had a lot to do with that, but the insistence that you actually get to take the diamonds yourself, not allow it, not enable the major partner to actually sell the diamonds, because there's a lot of loss of value in that process. And as I say, it enabled ABBA to become the third largest diamond company in the world with 40% Divik.
Yeah, it's quite the stock chart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it did. I mean, it came up when we were talking with Burgundy. I mean, they're our partner on the Naujaat project and the funding, the sample that we're collecting right now. I mean, a very strong partner, one with we have very similar views on project evaluation and so on. But Aber was central to the whole conversation as we were structuring the deal itself and how it could look and how it can work best for both parties. We actually did that in this room, and it was in February of 2020. And ideally, we were to have collected the sample last summer, but of course, COVID got in the way, so we're doing it in 2021 instead.
Right. Yeah, so the partner, Burgundy's a pretty new company and quite aggressive. I noticed they've been buying rough diamonds, from Acadie, I think, and then they bought one of the final pink diamonds from Argyle, which is now closed, right?
Yeah, I think that last news just the other day.
Yeah. So does North Arrow do you plan to cut and polish some of these stones, Ken, like you did with the earlier samples?
Well, it's an evaluation sample. So, I mean, the first thing, I guess really is sort of what are we looking for, and what does success end up looking like out of this bulk sample? Before we get to that point, with the project, as we pointed out, with where it is, and we know how big it is. I mean, this isn't, a lot of the risk is gone from this, right? It's not about discovery, and it's not about how big the kimberlite might be, or whether there's what the mineral chemistry like, or the micro diamonds. It's really not even whether there's commercial diamonds. The work we've done so far has shown that all of those things are in place that we need to see. It's this population of colored diamonds, and you might recall, and I know lots of people probably watching recall, we did collect a bigger sample in 2014 when we earned our interest. We recovered about just over 380 carats of diamonds, and we had them valued, and the valuation was disappointing. It wasn't high enough to make the project really make sense. But within that, we did confirm that there was this population of colored diamonds, and these yellow diamonds and orangey-yellow stones. And the group that did the valuation, they looked at them and said, well, we don't think that they're special. We don't think that they're going to hold up. We don't think you can cut them and polish them. So we were kind of left with this project of, well, what do we do? It's not going to go anywhere, but there's these very clear questions about these diamonds. So we did that cutting and polishing exercise in 2015 and 2016 and said, well, let's answer these questions. Let's try and polish these diamonds. Can they be polished? Do they break? Does the color not hold up? And it was highly successful. The diamonds that came out of that exercise, they're beautiful. We were able to have them certified at the GIA as fancy, vivid, orangey-yellow diamonds. They are high value diamonds and rare when we're looking at deposits around the world. And we have a very large deposit that potentially has a good number of these stones in them. The four biggest diamonds that we've recovered from our work to date are part of this yellow diamond population, and they range from about 3.5 carats up to 5.25 carats. So when we look at what we want to get out of this sample, we want to increase or see reason to believe that there's valuation upside in the diamonds. And there's two ways we can do that. One is to just confirm that on the coarse side, there's going to be more coarse diamonds. So I'll call it a coarse distribution. And I know you don't like that term, James, but it's are there more bigger diamonds in this yellow population than in the white population? Because a key thing that we did as well is we've done the work to show that the yellow diamonds are a distinct population. They're different. Their composition is different. They're of a different age than the white diamonds. So we need to model them separately. So we need more of them, and we'll get more of them from the sample to sort of prove that, on the coarser sizes, we're going to get more data points to be able to figure out what happens with that curve, to be able to confirm that those bigger diamonds are there. And there's value upside just in that. Once we confirm that we can model there's more of these diamonds, there's value upside. And then there's the quality of the diamonds and the overall valuation of the stones. And that, to your first question on cutting and polishing, it probably is going to make sense, right? Like the size and the fact that there's more coarse diamonds is an answer we'll get pretty immediately with the numbers, the straight numbers that come out of the sample. And then we'll need to do more of an in-depth dive into the diamonds themselves, which could involve valuation. It could involve looking at the colors more particularly. And then, probably some cutting and polishing is going to be required just to, again, confirm what that value upside might look like.
Right. And Tiffany's seen them and likes them, right?
Yeah, I mean, after we did the polishing, we showed them to a number of luxury jewelers who looked at them and said, we can use these diamonds in our pieces. And so by luxury jewelry, right, that's the highest end, that's the highest value sector, because these are fancy colored rare diamonds. So it's important on the size, because obviously exponential price growth or curve for diamonds as they get bigger and they have these colors. But the other thing that they really keyed in on was, some of the diamonds we polished were only 2 pointers. So that's like 2% of 1 carat. They're very tiny, but fully polished, round, brilliant diamonds that are fully saturated, certified as having that color. And that's actually rare in colored stones, to have that fully saturated color still hold up in very small diamonds, because the color needs the light to get in and accentuate it. And often for lesser saturations of color, the smaller diamonds tend to look whiter or off yellow, whereas these are the fully saturated color. And then what the jewelers keyed in on is those smaller stones would be of value to them as well, because they can be used to create pieces as accent pieces and so on. So there's a couple of different components to it that we're going to have to work on.
Right. So I want to circle back a little bit, put you on the spot. I'm not sure you answered the question. What does success look like on this sample specifically?
Yeah. So it's confirming that there are more coarse diamonds, confirming what we see that curve, that it's a what we call a flatter curve, that as we get to the coarser stones, so the bigger stones, so big above 1 carat or above 2 carats or above 5 carats, if the model holds up, that more often than not, those diamonds are going to be yellow and not white. And just that there's more of them than have been currently modeled as it is. And even the valuation we did in 2014. So that's the initial sort of positive. We prove that, then we've already proven that there's upside in the value, I think, for this deposit. And then it's that more detailed work, and whether it's cutting and polishing, looking at the quality of these stones. And then I think, as we've said, that then leads to a decision point for whether we move forward with another bigger sample to really get ourselves so we have enough carats to do a proper valuation for a feasibility level study.
Right. And then can you touch on sort of the logistics of that? Like if Burgundy decides to exercise the option to acquire 60% of Naujaat, maybe like the timeline and what's involved there.
Yeah, so it's right now it's a letter of intent, so there's nothing binding about that, but it's structured so that we'll get the final result, and so that sort of initial final result is going to be just the size information and the color information. So not necessarily detailed cutting and polishing, but sort of the program is defined as being done once we have all of the sizes and the colors sorted out from the diamond parcel that's going to come from the sample. And then there's a time frame in which they'll have a decision to make whether they want to try and proceed with that secondary option, and the way it's been outlined as being the collection of a 10,000 ton sample. And then the time frame for that does rely on the road that we touched on. When and how quickly can that be constructed? Because really, another sample using helicopters is probably not the way to do that. And so some details need to be built up around that, but we'd be looking at best case, the time frame would be a 2023 time frame for that sort of sample. And then in the meantime, we have a drill on site. There's more drilling to be done to upgrade and expand on the resource and get us towards an upgraded resource is a possibility. And these will be the sort of things that the joint venture, once it forms, that we'll need to talk through.
Okay. I'm going to really put you both on the spot now. And so your market cap's under 10 million now, despite the fact that it's quite an advanced stage project. I mean, are there other sort of comparable projects, or what do you both think the market cap should be at, given what you have? I don't know if you can answer that.
Well, I mean, it's on sort of the first part. I mean, the market determines market cap, and I think that ties into some of your points right off the beginning, James, right? On that the diamond space has been out of favor for a little while, but there are no other deposits like this in Canada. Certainly, like it is the largest resource, diamond resource that is not already in the hands of a diamond producer in Canada. And even when we look outside of Canada, there are not many projects that are at this stage. It takes a long time to get here. To the point where you've got a sizable bulk sample going through a plant where we're gonna see what comes out of it. We'll see what the diamonds are like, and just one good day in that processing plant could totally change the complexion for this deposit. And that is the real point that I think we want to try and get across here. But in terms of a diamond resource in Canada that's not already under a control of a producer, there isn't anything like it.
No, that's right. And another point about it all, too, is although it seems remote to the average shareholder, it's actually the ease with which we collected this sample has to be borne in mind. But that would be augurs well for production costs And likewise, similar operations, moving stuff around. It's a very accessible place. It's right on Tidewater.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah, no ice
$5.6 million to collect.
No.
No, like to collect the sample, $5.6 million. I mean, you can see in that video all those bags there. To collect a similar sample through RC drilling or large diameter drilling, I mean, it'd be orders of magnitude higher cost.
So the economics of the thing are very much dependent on that. So you might not need the kind of value in Lac de Gras to make something economic there.
Right. Okay, maybe that's a good point too. Ken, why don't you touch on, it's been a bit of some high profile failures in I guess in the Canadian diamond space. It's a smaller niche, investing niche to begin with, but like the supply demand fundamentals are actually quite good, aren't they? Strong demand, and mines are closing. Can you talk about that a bit, Ken?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the timing of the sample, despite it having taken a while and a year delay with COVID, the timing is really good. The market, we're entering a diamond market on both sides of that equation. On the supply side, the closure of Argyle was big because that was almost 10% of global rough supply is now gone. And that wasn't because of COVID, that was planned. That was something that was happening regardless. We've seen prices are up over 20% over the last 12 months, partly because of COVID for sure. But at the same time, we look at recent results, like Alrosa announced the first half sales of this year was their best first half sales since 2016. And similarly, I think De Beers' latest site on a like-for-like basis for a site at this time of year was their best set of sales numbers since 2016. So rough prices are looking promising. We're really hearing too that there's premium pricing available now for niche goods, and certainly Naujaat with our colored diamonds will fit that. We're seeing major mine expansions being announced by producers like Lucara with their expansion at Crowe, De Beers and the partnership with Debswana moving forward with expansions at Arapa and Zhuaneng. And these are multi-billion-dollar expansions, and by companies that understand the market and understand going forward where the market's heading, and they're willing to make those bets. And then on the retail side, I mean, Signet is the largest retail jeweler in the United States, and they've increased their forecast, the revenue forecast this year 4 times as things bounce back. Chow Tai Fook in China continues with their rapid expansion and opening stores at a pretty amazing clip in mainland China. So all components of the market seem to be humming along. But I think I would just circle back to the main thing is this idea that premium goods that are rare are getting exceptionally high prices right now. And this project is going to have that. Like, it does seem it helps. A diamond project that has something unique to it, whether it happens to be size or a particular quality of stone, or in our case, having a fancy color to it, is that I think the kind of thing that a deposit is going to need to really get it over the hump. And this project certainly needs that. And we know that it's there, and this sample is ideally just going to confirm that it's there for us so we can keep moving it forward.
Okay. Well, why don't we go from there into some questions? We've got some questions coming in, and if you have some, type them into the box, and we'll handle them. So some of the questions deal with catalysts. So when do you expect to be able to release the results of this bulk sample that's being processed now? Okay.
Well, as we said when we announced that production is underway, it is broken into 5 subsamples. So we picture releasing results sort of in stages. Each subsample will get processed through to recovery and to be able to stage results. So I sure would hope right now that we will have the results from at least 1, if not 2 of those subsamples by the end of the calendar year. And then overall processing will spill over into the first quarter of next year. But we'll try and stage it out so that we're not sitting around waiting until the final result is in.
Right. And then I guess there's
we'll be
a
impatient.
possibility and I guess there's a possibility of wild cards. Like, I don't know. I mean, if you find quite a large, a yellowy or orangey-yellow stone, like, will you news release that potentially, or what's kind of your plan there?
Yeah, I mean, we always are bound by materiality. So if a material piece of information comes to us, we'll need to report that to the market.
Okay, so another question is, once you have the results of the bulk sample, are you able to put a valuation on those results?
We'll see how it goes. A formal valuation of the parcel itself is not sort of part of the program that we've defined with Burgundy. So, but it is certainly something we have talked about and said, yeah, we're going to do that if it makes sense. We just need to see what comes out of it. So we'll certainly try and articulate as best we can how that might impact the valuation. But I think really what the market should be looking for is, like I said, confirmation that we're getting bigger stones, and we can ideally do that through some releasing some of the curves and so on, just to show what we were hoping to get, which we've done in a few of our presentations. And I think there was a slide of it just that we showed here. If we're able to prove that course curve works, I think we've talked about it before, like that. If that sort of interpreted course curve works, we can then apply the valuation that we got back in 2015 that was disappointing, and we ended up with a model price of between $43 and $92 a carat. But if the course distribution on these yellow diamonds is there, well, that valuation actually changes to being something more like between $80 and $200 a carat, just because there's more bigger diamonds there than we were giving the deposit credit for before. That doesn't take into account the quality of the stones or the fact that they're actually worth more money. So that's probably the key piece of information to look for on a valuation side. And then for numbers and so on, we just have to see if we're at a spot where we can move forward on a preliminary economic assessment level. We can't really answer that until we know the confidence with which we know what the valuation might end up being. So it's a little bit of a long-winded answer with some wriggle room in there, but keep asking questions like that, and we'll try and get it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a flawed valuation that sort of tanked your stock for quite some time. So any further, any future valuation, are you going to use the same company, or is that company, are they cognizant of the value potential here now, or how does that work?
Yeah, they are. I mean, they're experienced valuators, right? So it's not done, the valuation wasn't done in a vacuum. It was done with people looking at the diamonds and having those questions that I mentioned, right? That they had concerns about those stones and whether they were truly fancy and whether they would polish well or not. So we've answered those questions. So that information certainly would need to feed back into a valuation. I think we're perhaps in a bit of a different world now where a single valuation may not be the way to go. That we want to get a number of different opinions, and we'll need to work through how best to do that. But it certainly, having done the polishing exercise, we can now say, okay, these stones, this is how they turned out. And we're seeing very similar stones with similar characteristics, and that they need to get credit for that in any future valuation. And then, because at the end of the day, it isn't a rough diamond, right? It isn't the product. It's still an intermediary product. At the end of the day, the product is that polished stone that ends up in a piece of high-end luxury jewelry. And that's the value that matters, that we'll need to prove, I think.
Mm-hmm. Right. What's the percentage of yellow stones to white at Naujaat, or at Q1 to 4?
Yeah. By stone, it varies with size. So that gets into, we think that we're seeing more. But by stone count, it varies between 6 and about 9% by stone count. But by carat weight, in some of the past samples, it's been upwards of 20% by carat weight. And that then underscores the fact that the bigger stones are part of that colored population.
Right. Size matters.
It does.
So given what you said about the a future potential much larger bulk sample with Burgundy, do you expect to do any work at Naujaat in 2022? And if so, what?
Yeah, I think helping the hamlet with the road will be number one. Right? That's where I think in terms of activities on site, our focus will need to sort of switch to that, saying how do we help move that project along. As I mentioned, there is a drill there. So we could look, and there are some questions in terms of delineation that need to get answered if we really want to try and expand that resource down to that 300-meter level or even deeper. So that sort of work can be done to help with, and that then helps with our spatial data set in terms of diamonds. And, as we learned with the last bulk sample, that there's a real process once you have the diamond parcel. Even just getting it prepared for evaluation or any cutting and polishing, that requires time. So that work would be happening in concert then with a decision on getting up there for a new bulk sample, one of the things we would want to do, and I think we look very, very seriously at, is we did a study of a mobile processing plant that could get manufactured and shipped up there for a larger 10,000 ton sample. We would want to take a closer look at that and then figure out what sort of timing do we need in order to get that fabricated so it could get shipped up there, so it could be there for the summer of 2023. So that would be the kind of work that we would be looking at for the project. And then, of course, with our other projects in our portfolio, we have Piku in Saskatchewan. We have a drill program in the can ready to go there. We are highly confident there's more discoveries to be made there and would like to get on the ground. Similarly with our projects up at Lac de Gras that we mentioned, there's work we want to get done there. So it's a number of things, and often built on sort of the Aber example, right? And Gren's experience with Aber, having a number of projects in the company to continue moving things along. We just need to turn the corner to get this sample result out, so that we can get fully financed to be moving forward on all of these projects.
Right. I guess work you can do on the other projects is dependent on the treasury and on financing. But do you think it's realistic that there will be any drilling at any of the other projects next year?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is realistic. We didn't talk in the share structure slide. I think it was up, and it showed we've got a fair number of warrants. The warrants are pretty well priced right now. Like we have about just under 18 million warrants at 10 cents, and then there's another 5 or 6 million at 18 cents, and about 25 million at 22 cents. So just to give viewers an idea of where they're all priced, and the ideal way for us to go forward is to get, I think, some traction in the market to get our share price sort of firmly above that 10 cent mark to start, and then if those warrants come in, that gives us a good chunk of money to get at least a Piku to get some drilling done there while we're doing the legwork on Naujaat.
Okay, that's actually a good segue into another question from somebody who may well be a North Arrow shareholder. Why the difference in market value between North Arrow and Burgundy?
Yeah, fair question. I wish I knew. I mean, Burgundy they are listed on the Australian Exchange, so it's a different market, different shareholder base. They're taking a different path, as we talked about too, and had a very clear vision of what they wanted to do as they reorganized their company last year, and have been very successful in executing it. On the Canadian side, for Canadian investors, I think there is and has been some fatigue in the diamond space, and just other places that in other commodities where share prices have increased and money has been there to be made. And I think one of the main things to talk about here, though, is for those that are familiar with the diamond space, want to look at it. We thank you for signing up and coming to watch this. And this is just to sort of underscore that now could be the time. North Arrow is the best positioned junior miner in Canada with our projects to take advantage of a turn in the diamond market. And we think the timing is here right now for that turn to happen. So
Burgundy, I guess they bought the old Ellendale mine as well, right? They're sort of trying to fast track that, I think. But how confident? I know it's early, but how confident are you that they'll exercise that second option for 60%?
Oh, I mean, I think if the results are there, then that's been their intention all along. That's why it was built in, is they wanted to have that optionality. I can't speak for where they're at corporately and what their plans are, but I think there was an acknowledgement when we negotiated that the deal is having that secondary option as non-binding. Adds risk to their position, because if a truly spectacular diamond happens to come out of the sample, well, the price of that second option goes up or doesn't happen, right? So we have some control over that. So we'll really need to wait and see what comes from the sample. But they're clearly committed to the diamond space and to fancy color diamonds, right? So I think they're know that they're taking great interest in the sample now as it gets processed.
Somebody asked, and it's a good question, about Hope Bay, the gold project that you have up near, I guess Agnico's mine now. Agnico's, they've always said that like exploration's a big part of why they wanted that project. Is there a chance of selling Hope Bay to them or optioning it or somehow monetizing that?
Yeah, we're looking at options to do that. I think I announced over a year ago that we were looking at options. COVID kind of put a bit of a wrinkle in that, like in many things. But it is on our radar to see what we can do there. It's in a great location. I mean, it's 3 kilometers from Doris, operating gold mine that Agnico is operating and just took control of over the last, I guess, 6 months ago or so. It's the Hope Bay belt it's a gold belt, and our Hope Bay Oro claims are right along trend, same rocks, same structure.
Well, it was the original discovery in the belt. It was on our ground. Yeah.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Was there? Yeah. Well, there's
a long time ago.
Yeah, up at Ida Point, and then that did, because it was the most accessible. It was right on the coast, right? As old timing prospecting would happen, is you could pull up in a boat, and it's the one shear. The main showing on the property is called the Ida Shear, and it is right on the shoreline. You pull up and walk up the outcrop, and there it is.
Yeah, and so I mean the drillings, you've hit high grade or not? High grade gold has been drilled there already too, right, on your property?
Yeah, and it's a matter of continuity and so on. I think for that shear, and our focus has been on diamonds, is what we've been doing, and when we were talking to other parties, that's sort of the take. But I think from what we do know about it, the mineralization at Doris sits at a very distinct stratigraphic horizon between two chemically distinct types of volcanic rocks, types of basalt, and that contact extends up onto our property. We know that it does from the mapping that we've done, and we know that both of those different stratigraphic rock types or volcanic types are there, and a lot of the time that contact is covered by overburden. So that's where the opportunity lies, is seeing what's happening.
And it's only a few kilometers. It's not a long way. It's what 3 kilometers something.
Yeah, it is 3 kilometers. If this was again anywhere else, put it in the Abitibi, put it in Red Lake, so close to an existing head frame, there would have been a lot more work done on that property than has been done so far. So it is prospective, absolutely.
Right. I guess the risk there is Agnico with the Kirkland Lake thing, sort of being distracted or focused on other things. But
yeah, but they just purchased Hope Bay, so that they're committed into the long term, I would say, on production from Hope Bay. So that mining operation isn't gonna go away, and it doesn't change then the prospectivity, I guess, of the oral leases.
Right. Okay, I think that's it for questions. This has been a good conversation. Thanks, guys. So why don't we give some books away?
Okay. All right. Okay.
Right.
That's the next. Thanks, James. Really good to be able to do this, and then
Thanks for your time and organization of this event.
Yeah. Did you guys? Is there anything that we missed?
Right. They're going to be pulled off. So we have. This is quite a turnout of people. So I don't know, Gren. I think is there any last thoughts? So I think the book has been shown, but
the book primarily was written for my grandchildren, because it contains a lot of personal and family stuff, but there are some things in there of interest to exploration people, but it's not a geology book. It's just a personal thing that I left for my grandchildren to read. But some people have read it and seem to think they like it. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating cast of characters in there.
Yeah, there are.
Sure. And I'd say it's good that for those of you that have watched this, because it's very much written in Gren's voice. So as you're reading it, you'll have you'll have the right timbre of voice in your ear as you're reading along. So I guess we've got 3 of them to pull out here, Gren.
Okay, that's one. So individually, or
if you do all 3, then you can open them up and.
Yeah, maybe I should get one from the side.
Yeah, and I'll turn the box around here
another
too.
One from over here somewhere. Not that it makes a difference, a statistician would tell you. Okay. Chris Bailey.
Right. Chris Bailey?
Yeah. David Uram.
David Uram. Congratulations. And the third.
Oh, I've got two here.
Oh.
Stop killing.
Sorry, Luke Ten Have.
Yeah, what?
Luke Ten Have. He's a shareholder. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. I think we have everybody's email. So
So they should
somebody will
contact
be in
you?
touch with each of the three of you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can, or we'll also reach out. I think we have the emails with the registration, and then we can sort out shipping, and you'll have some nice reading material. But thanks, James, for setting this up and,
Okay.
and doing this. It's a nice chance to be able to talk about the project in North Arrow and Gren's.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, it was good. Thanks, guys. Okay, take care. And thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks very much.
James, thanks.
Yeah. See, it's quite